The next track in our F1 24 wet car setup series is another unlikely one, and that's Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Much like our dry setup, this wet setup creates a car which is a bit of a rocket ship, and you may have to actually increase the AI difficulty a little bit around here. I'm not going to waste any time, I'm going to jump straight into the aero. For our wet setup, I've gone with a front wing of 27 and a rear wing of 17. This is an increase of 2 on the front wing and an increase of 4 on the rear, and that's to help with this rear stability, which is so important around those fast left and right turns around Jeddah. For the transmission setup, I've knocked the on-throttle diff down to 45, which is a reduction of 30%. You don't need to go too much lower than this because there aren't too many heavy traction zones and many of the corners are kind of medium speed. With the off-throttle, I've lowered it to 50 and I've set the engine braking to 70%. Much like our Bahrain setup, a lot of the geometry can carry across into our wet setup. Leave the camber all the way left and then lower the front toe down to 0 and lower the rear toe down to 0.15. With the suspension setup, I've actually softened the front suspension by 1 point, knocking it down to 37, and I've left the rear at 5. And then I've also softened the anti-roll bars to 14 and 8. All of these changes just help make the car a little bit more stable and compliant. I've set the front ride height a bit higher at 26 to avoid aquaplaning and left the rear ride height at 58. For the brakes, I've knocked the pressure down to 99%. This just takes the edge off a little bit and makes braking a little bit more consistent, and I've left the bias at 54%. The tyre pressures are pretty similar to our dry setup, go 28.5 on both front tyres and 26.5 on both rear tyres. Much like Bahrain, you probably won't ever see rain in a career mode race around Jeddah, but on that occasion where you just want to jump in Grand Prix and try a wet race around here, here is the setup to use. We're just starting our wet setup series, so hit that subscribe button if you want to be notified when a new setup drops. But for now guys, I'll see you on track.